Okay, we are now live. Apologies for the delayed opening. We are at 7:43. I'd like to open up the April 25th meeting of Long Hill Township. Would everybody please rise and join me for a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Debbie, could you please take roll?
Committeeman Maringolo.
Here.
Committeeman Wright.
Present.
Committeeman Schuler.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey.
Here.
Mayor Paserchia.
Present. Okay, at this point, I think we're going to call up our auditor, Mr. Serenelli. Is that? Open it first?
Open the public hearing first.
Okay, so I'm going to open up the public hearing. Yeah. There will be no vote tonight. The adoption will be moved to May 9th. But at this point, I guess we'll have our auditor, Mr. Raymond Serenelli, come up and speak. Raymond, thanks for being here.
Sure. Okay, Ray Serenelli from Nisavacha, your township auditor. So you sort of already alluded to the fact that you won't be adopting the budget tonight, but the process is you are subject to, so every 3 years you're subject to state review. This year you are subject to the state review, and they did review their budget, and they had a few questions, but I think for the most part all those questions were cleared, except that you have to have a sewer rate ordinance in place before you can adopt the budget, so that the state is confident that you've created a sewer utility that is self-liquidating, meaning the revenues match the appropriations. So you have, or you're required to have the public hearing tonight, and then the action would be to table the budget until your next meeting, May 9th. Hopefully you'll have your sewer rate and ordinance in place. You can get the calculations to the state and get their approval by that date. So normally I just put a few things on the record in as far as amounts in a brief conversation about the budget. So obviously the most notable item related to your 2018 budget is the separation of the sewer utility or the sewer operations into a sewer utility from the way it had been handled in the past, which was as a current fund department. So the sewer revenue was coming into the operating budget, and all of your sewer expenses were, some were separated, but many others were commingled with your regular current fund expenses. Your referendum on whether to sell the utility or not was defeated, so the plan was to move forward and specifically identify in a sewer utility and track the expenses so that only the sewer utility users were paying all of the sewer utility expenses. And it's much easier to track when you have them segregated into a sewer utility. As far as your operating budget goes, you were under both levy caps. The total budget, and I'm just going to read these in, and I know it's a little bit confusing. The 2018 budget is a total of $14,090,000. The 2017 budget was $15,424,000. The reason it sounds like it's so much less is because you moved about $1,550,000 of your operating expenses into a sewer utility. So when you net that out and look at last year's budget without the sewer expenses in it, it looks to be about $13,870,000, and this year's budget is $14,090,000 without that sewer in there. So that's about a $220,000 increase in the operating expenses of the budget. The tax levy from, and this is really what matters, is what the tax levy is. The 2018 tax levy is $9,617,000, and the 2017 levy was $9,516,000. So your tax levy increased $101,000, which is just slightly more than 1%, right? So you're well under the 2% levy cap. and you're also significantly under the 2.5 or 3.5% appropriation cap. You also created in this budget a separate sewer utility budget, which is for the first time in 2018 at $2,014,000. So you're projecting that you're going to create a sewer rate ordinance that will generate net revenue of $2,014,000, and you've pulled all those operating expenses out and separated them. I know it was difficult to craft a budget that separates those for the first time, and there were quite a few meetings of the Finance Committee to get that budget in that condition. You know, looking at your budget from the outside, I think looking through all of your line items, your budget basically is a status quo budget. It keeps all of the services that you had with a very modest 1% increase in the tax levy. I didn't see anything particularly exciting either way, going up or down. So going forward, you know, I know there are still some very significant expenses to be dealt with as it relates to the sewer utility. You know, you've increased this year's budget and you're going to pass a sewer ordinance to get to phase one, but I think this future sewer budgets are going to be challenging based on some of the preliminary meetings that I've had with the administrator and the CFO, looking at the engineering studies, what the future capital costs are going to be to get your plant to where it needs to be. I'll just call it challenging at this point because there still will continue to be increases to meet those future capital needs as well as the operating expenses. So that's my perspective of your budget. I think it's a carefully put together budget. It's now in compliance with the state requirements. You just need to get that rate ordinance passed and you'll be able to adopt your budget. So I would recommend that you proceed with your budget hearing and table the action on the budget until you get your rate in place.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. So actually, at this point, I'd like to ask our CFO to come up. Randy, if you wouldn't mind.
Good evening. Randy Boris, CFO for the Township of Long Hill. I think the auditor did a great job of summarizing everything. He touched upon all the issues that the Finance Committee had some long discussions with, let's say that way. It was a very difficult budget coming up the first time with the utility budget, knowing that you guys are going to have to put a lot of capital expense into the whole system, not just the plant. So, you know, with that being said, you know, I think Mrs. Sarinelli did a great job summarizing everything. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Committee members, questions for Randy?
I don't have any questions. I just want to take the opportunity to thank Randy for all his hard work on this. It was a long road, and we truly appreciate your effort.
Well, thank you. It was a team effort.
And if I could add to it, I want to thank Bruce and Cornell, who, again, put an awful lot of time and effort into this budget. And to put it in perspective, the 9 years that I've been fortunate to serve the residents of Long Hill Township, roughly, the municipal side of property taxes has gone up about 13% in total. That's about 1.4% per year, which I can absolutely guarantee you relative to all other expenses, both inside Long Hill Township and relative to other municipalities, is quite an accomplishment. And the last few years, I thank Bruce and Cornell for the work they've put in. That's it. And at this point, I think I'm going to open it up to public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to announce, we're just carrying it to May 9th?
You need a motion to close public hearing.
Okay, we have to motion for the, to carry to May 9th?
Yes, to carry the vote until, to close the public hearing and carry the vote until May 9th.
Okay, so I'm looking for the motion as Jack just
So moved.
explained.
Second?
Committeeman Marengolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Pasurkian?
Yes. So just a couple of mayoral appointments. Pamela Klawitzer, unfortunately, had to resign from the library board. We thank her very much for her years of service. Joanne Askey is going to fill her position. She's just moving from the position she currently serves. And Jonathan Kelly will be appointed with an expiration to...
Did we miss one of the?
No, because you can't,
Can't vote on it. Adoption
vote
of
on
budget.
it, so.
That one. So we're not, so we don't have to do 18-132 first? No, that's the introductions, or adoptions. Okay, so we'll do that the following week. Okay, thank you. Apologies. That's okay. Just thought we missed something. Rather find out now.
No problem. And for that interruption, you're going to go last on the liaison reports. Matt?
Wait, are we gonna, we have to confirm, Jonathan Kelly's by vote.
Yes.
Oh, I apologize.
Mayor with consent.
Oh, sorry, I became a little Captain
Bottom of
Queeg on
page
that
2.
one, huh? So can I have a motion to appoint Jonathan Kelly?
So moved.
To the library board.
Confirm the appointment by the mayor.
Did somebody second that?
Second?
Committeeman Marengolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Pasurkian?
Yes. Matt?
I think you have my report for today.
Okay, so yeah,
Well, the only thing I would like to add is there was an issue with the cleanup following the street fair. Obviously, it wasn't a DPW issue. We have other DEP issues. And Mary Mayer actually addressed it very quickly from the Chamber of Commerce. Basically, Main Street wasn't clean because which is JC Promotions contracts out a street sweeper, and the street sweeper never showed up. Or they did show up, they just showed up late. So that's why when people got up on Monday morning, Main Avenue was a mess. However, they rectified the situation. So that wasn't a DPW issue. It was a contractor issue, and Mary Mayer from the Chamber of Commerce was on it very quickly, and it got fixed.
and the machine, it's not that they didn't just show up, the machine
Something broke,
broke.
or the machine broke, they couldn't get there.
And this is the same company that's done this for the last how many years?
Ten.
Things happen sometimes,
course.
so. They apologized, they called to apologize, and what can we do? Brendan?
18. You stand correct. 18 years of the street fair.
18 years? 18 years.
18 sunny days. Well, no report.
Bruce? Cornell?
Nothing to report.
Just a quick comment regarding, and Matt, I apologize, I didn't get this till earlier, so I'll just be quick. I want to publicly thank the DPW department, but a little bit more explicitly than we usually do. The Public Works Department started on March 7th. March 7th was the snowstorm Quinn. Riley came soon after. The entire department removed trees the night of the storm, and I know that because I was out with Brendan, probably getting in everybody's way. With the chief as well, we were out that night. But the DPW workers were working nonstop that night just to make the streets passable as best they could. On March 17th, the department started collecting branches and tree parts curbside throughout the town. There were some challenges with weather again. But they were working 11-hour days, with only Sundays off, up until last week. After that point, since the overtime budget had been expended, they went back to 9-hour days, still collecting as best they could. I believe Mr. Sweeney informed me that only Long Hill Road is left, which is a phenomenal accomplishment. They calculated 12,000 cubic yards of storm-related tree parts and branches from this event. It's incredible. And I know we always say thank you to the DPW department and thank you to DPW Tom Sweeney. But this department, they're made up of people. You see them all the time, and I want to state their names and thank them publicly. Tom McGuire, Darren Kaleo, Eric Stencil, Randy Wotek, Al Gallo, John Arpaia, and I apologize, I know I didn't say that correctly, John, Ed Duffy, Jim Anderson, Pat Murray, Tom Love, and Leon Gabi. So thank you for what you did. Thank you, Tom. This was not something you had to volunteer your team to do. So the work you guys put in went above and beyond. So thank you, and thank you to everybody who I just mentioned. So now we'll go to the consent agenda. Any comments? Anybody want to pull something for discussion? I'll give you a chance to look at it, Cornell.
Thank you.
I'll move Resolution 18-134 through 18-145 as stated in the agenda by exception.
Second.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Paserchian?
Yes. And Debbie very astutely put little yellow stickies in here for me, thinking in some way that would keep me on track.
I tried.
So any failure from this point on is solely my own. This is the second reading adoption of Township of Long Hill Ordinance Number 410-18. I'll read it. An ordinance concerning performance and maintenance guarantees and amending Section 183 of the Township Land Use Ordinance entitled Performance and Maintenance Guarantees, Engineering Inspection Fees, and repealing parts of Section 184 entitled Improvements. Township Committee comments, questions?
Page 22, the
Whoa.
next tab. For your open and close.
What's that?
For your open and close, if you go to 22.
Nobody wants to have comments before. right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
So, none? None?
No.
All right, so at this point, I'd like to open it up to the public for comments, questions on this ordinance only at this point. Seeing none?
Move
looking for a
ordinance
mo-
410-18 as stated in the agenda.
Second.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Paserchian?
Yes. I see Committeeman Ray is being very subtle tonight. You can barely hear. Township of Long Hill Ordinance 412-18, an ordinance making Title 39 of the New Jersey statutes applicable to
Wait,
Sunrise.
411.
Skip 411.
Bottom of page 22, where the sticky is.
Oh,
Obviously.
No-
you
no
missed a
yellow sticky.
You missed a sticky.
That and
No
the
411 sticky on there?
no.
Oh, I have mine.
I mean, come on.
Fell off. I'm sure it's in the executive conference room.
I mean, you have to tell me breathe, chew. Township of Long Hill, ordinance 411-18, calendar year 2018, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. I'd like to open this up to the public for comment, questions on this ordinance only. Seeing none, looking for a motion.
Move ordinance 411-18 as stated in the agenda.
Second.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Paserchian?
Yes. Township of Long Hill ordinance number 412-18, ordinance making Title 39 of the New Jersey statutes applicable to Sunrise at Gillette and supplementing and amending Chapter 7 of the Township Code entitled Traffic. Comments, questions, committee? I'd like to open it up to the public on comments or questions on this ordinance. Seeing none, looking for a motion.
Move ordinance 412-18 as stated in the agenda.
Second.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Paserchian?
Yes. I was looking, I got another sticky here, but it's kind of a mystery sticky.
Oh, maybe that was the 411.
It reappeared. No, actually, it's
It says
not.
discussion and.
Right, so we've gone on, okay.
Right, so that's where you are with that sticky.
Or-
We have the sewer. Do you want to do that before discussion?
Yes,
The sewer ordinance.
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Why don't we go get, well,
Do the
I don't
sewer
know,
first.
which,
Do the ordinance, because that's it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
We
to
need,
you.
Sewer ordinance? I'm sorry, sewer user rate ordinance? Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
we need
Right.
numbers, and we need to introduce it.
The
Explain why.
yes.
18, 418?
418?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe if Nancy could give us a little background on it,
Yeah.
I think would be helpful for the public for sure, and probably for us.
Okay, as Ray Serenelli discussed, we created a sewer utility this year. And in doing so, we had to create a separate sewer utility budget. It has approximately 4 million,
Sorry, the sewer utility budget?
sorry, yeah,
2,014,763 dollars.
so in a, exactly.
I almost know it by heart.
In appropriations, and the state requires that we adopt the sewer fee ordinance in order to show that that is where we're going to raise the money. Because when you have an appropriation, you also have to show a revenue. So we cannot adopt our budget until we introduce a sewer rate ordinance. This was earlier than we had anticipated setting the rate, but it has to be done in order to pass the budget. So we will be introducing the ordinance today, and then second reading will be on May 9th, right before we adopt our budget. So now I'll turn it over to Committeeman Schuler to discuss.
To try and explain the spreadsheets that I sent out. So I had sent a couple of spreadsheets about this once we had found out about it. We have a couple of options this year with regards to the rate and how to structure the rate and distribute or redistribute the costs. So there's a unit price per 1,000 gallons that will obviously have to change to some level. We currently charge a base fee for all users. So there is a question around whether or not this committee wants to, how do you want to distribute those costs? Do you just want to change the usage rate and make the burden entirely based upon usage? Or does the committee feel that there is some fixed opportunity cost, as I'd call it, to the fact that you have a sewer system? And, should a portion of the fees be a flat rate regardless of how much you use?
And to just tack onto that, I brought up this discussion when we were talking about the sewer, because we have really two issues going on here. We have capital improvements, and then we have general usage, right? The general usage, the more you use, times your rate, the higher your bill. But the capital improvements, because the asset is owned equally by everyone, do we bill that by the rate, or do we flat rate that across the board? Because in theory, I own the same amount of the sewer system as the resident, as the next guy, but if I use more water, I pay more for it, right? And the converse is true as well, right? I own the same amount, but if I use less of it, I pay less for it, for those capital improvements. So over the next 20 years, we're looking at a very significant capital investment where the rates are going to go up dramatically. Well, do we distribute those rates evenly because everyone has the same share ownership, for lack of a better concept, with the exception of the usage? And that's kind of the discussion that we had as we went through the budget discussions, and we said, let's save that for later when we get to this point. And now we're here where we have to come up with rates.
Right, so, to Bruce's point, one way you can look at it is you've got a set of fixed costs, right, that are the tangibles, and that cost is that cost regardless whether you're sending a gallon or 1,000 gallons, right? That brick still costs the same amount. I think if we go that way, I don't necessarily know how well that's gonna work, because currently, the fixed cost represents less than, our fixed fee, I should say, our current fixed fee represents less than 10% of the revenue. So 90% of the current billing structure the revenue is based entirely upon usage, right? So I threw some numbers out into a spreadsheet and gave you some scenarios. So if we were to, if I can find the sheet that I'm looking for, if we do a $100 bill, an additional flat $100 per ratepayer, and the rest based upon usage, it would bring that ratio to about 24%. So 24% of our revenue would be based upon a fixed fee, and the remaining 76% would be a variable cost. If you do something like $50, it would be 17%. And again, this is rough.
Is that 100 per what?
Per household, or per customer.
And what
Currently.
time period?
So for the year.
So,
So currently, the water bill, when a person gets a water bill, there's a $75 base fee.
okay,
If you use zero, you get a bill for $75.
even if you use nothing?
Even, and we have some of those, believe it or not, that are zero that pay $75. Anything that you use goes above and beyond that. So if you were to do that $75 and then add $100, call it what you want, capital improvement. Surcharge,
Well-
whatever. If you were to change the base fee to 175, it doesn't really matter which way you do it. Your ratio would now be 24% of your revenue, would be from fixed costs. So need some guidance in order to determine the rate per gallon, and some of this I'm gonna be doing on the fly. I need to get a sense of how much you guys feel should be a fixed.
Well, the concept is already in place, because the $75.
Do you wanna tweak the ratio?
Right, so this isn't a new concept. It's just a question of what that amount is.
Correct. Right, and it's if you make no change to the fixed rate, your revenue from fixed would be about 10%. And I say about because the calculations that I did with this were based upon 2016 usage, because I didn't have the 2017 data yet.
So based on what we're spending right now on upkeep and or capital costs, is there can you work out some percentage that would be?
Well, we're looking
appropriate?
at $1.4 million a year, right? That's all capital. None of that is an operating expense. It's line the sewer pipes, it's
Right.
replace a pump. It's those are all capital out. I mean, if you do it by the book,
Right.
and Randy and I were discussing this earlier, the amount of variable costs in the sewer plant really aren't all that much, right? It's sludge disposal, it's chemicals, it's some level of electricity, right? The bulk of the costs are fixed. I mean, your personnel is fixed. You gotta keep the plant manager there, whether you've got 10 gallons or 10,000 gallons, right? So I'm not sure we can look at it.
Okay.
We can't make it that, because then you're talking about a flat rate of $500,
Right.
and then make the rest usage. And I mean that could be, if you wanted to do that, I would argue to make that a long-term goal and take little steps to get there, not overnight, because you've got a large number of people. Like I said, if you do, and I gave you this data in an email, but if you do $100, you're gonna have about 209 people whose rates are gonna go up more than 50%. All the people that build at less than 5,000 gallons for the entire year, basically, we're getting a $100 bill, and now you're gonna slap another $100 on overnight. Now, let's be honest, we're still talking about $200 for the year, right? It's 20 bucks a month. It shouldn't destroy anybody, but it is something to consider.
Just to play devil's advocate, you have a car, and you and I drive that car. I drive it 90% of the time, you drive it 10% of the time. It stands to reason that the depreciation on that capital expense, which is the car, I should pay 90% of it. So,
Except if when you sell it, you get half.
yeah, but if it's depreciated to
Well, right,
zero, what am I getting?
Right, but
Well, what are you getting? Because
but
you're the
the-
one that's
but the-
driving at
But the
10%.
asset benefit, right, the 25 million that the plant is worth, right, that's all of ours.
Yeah,
Equal-
and to be
equally.
fair, you're
There's
not, you're
no
not
distinction.
suggesting,
Yeah.
Harlan, you're
Yeah,
just
I
saying,
don't-
you're looking for a number. It's
I'm
already
looking for you
75.
guys to give me a sense of, you know,
It's already
$100,
75.
$50.
And would you mind, go over those percentages again? If it stays at 75, it's X.
if it stays at $75, it is roughly 10% of the entire revenue stream.
Okay. And if it,
Based upon the target number of $2 million.
And if
I'll tell you in a second, hold on, let me find, I've got a whole bunch of tabs going on here. It
Is it-
generates, the flat fees would generate roughly $202,000, which is roughly 10% of 2,014,000.
okay. Dennis, I see you, I mean, it's not going to be open for public session tonight, but can you help us somewhere? Little history. Oh, history, fine. We love history.
There is absolutely no magic to the $75 number. Back when we had, in 10 years ago and much earlier, we had a banded schedule. You use so much in this band, you paid a certain amount. And when we converted that to a sliding scale, the question was, how could we minimize the impact on every one of the customers? And so Mayor Nan did a extensive analysis using some numbers in a spreadsheet that I put together, and we concluded that the Pareto optimal solution, that is to say, the solution that caused the least pain for the least amount of people, was $75 flat and then a sliding scale from there. If you had raised that and tilted that or done it the other way, more people would have been affected worsely. And so the $75 was an arbitrary compromise number to minimize pain at that time, but there was no attempt to go through the 10% exercise that you're going through.
Right, yep.
But so there's nothing sacred about that ratio or about the $75, just happened to be optimal at the time to minimize pain. If you have a different solution now that minimizes pain in a different way, there would be no reason not to raise that number from 75. And it's been constant at 75. We've raised the sliding
years.
scale over the years, but we've never changed the 75.
Thank you for the clarification, Dennis.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those discussions, and it was a very delicate balance between, you know, as Dennis said, they were trying to upset the least amount of people.
Okay,
Good.
then I'll throw that question.
But we're also, right now, the scenario is a little bit different because everybody is in a world of hurt right now with this. So it's, you know, it's really about where you think that
Where did the $100 number come from? That was just random? You didn't put much thought into that, or?
it got me to 25% or close to 25%.
Okay, so there was a
There was a
thought
little bit of thought in it, yeah, but.
I mean,
You know,
I'm,
and I also ran the scenario for 50%. And again, not right, this, what we do here today doesn't set what we do next year. We can say, maybe the end goal is 100, and let's do it in 2 steps, or let's do it in 4 steps. Do 25 this year, 25 next year, so that we don't bang up the bottom end users, right? Those people, because there's a group of people, there's a substantial group of people that are, I'll tell you exactly. Sorry, I'm going through a 3,000 row spreadsheet. Give me a second. There's about.
You're the only one harassing yourself. We're not harassing.
I know.
You went light on that spreadsheet.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you have every property. There's about 624 people, 623 people that pay less than $300. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. I'm in the wrong column. Hold on. There's 490-ish people that pay less than $300, right? So if you.
And that's of the 28,
And that's of the
2,800,
2,800. So
okay.
if you give them a $100 increase, right, that's a 33% increase for those 490 people.
of 15% of the population, or of the property
right?
owners.
So it's how, to Dennis's point, the least amount of pain for the least amount of people. Where do we want to be on that scale?
Well, I mean, you've put most of the time into this. Do you think 25 per year for 4 years? Do you think 50 a year for 3 years, or do you think 100?
Look, to me, I think I would do the 100, but not for any other reason than my own belief is that there is and I used it before, a fixed opportunity cost just for being connected to the source system, whether you use anything or not. And to say 25% of that cost is fixed and then the rest is usage, to me is not an unreasonable number. I'm also okay with 20%. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, but then it comes out to like $91.10 or something. I mean, it's, then you get
However
it.
you guys want to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds fair to me.
I mean, what's your feeling on it? Where do you think that it should all be, the majority should be variable, it should be less variable?
I mean, it would be nice if there was some, clear-cut way where you could actually use some logic to say, okay, this is, because from a fairness perspective, since we all own it, we should all pay the certain amount, and then, the rest of it based on usage, but it seems like there's no real sound basis for that, and it's really just it's a kind of a feel. And the other thing about just the car example, if you use it 90% of the time and you got 50% whenever it was sold, that's obviously unfair. But here, I tend to think even there it's kind of you pay off debt with it, so it's all things that I use certain things more that debt was incurred for than others, and so it all kind of just comes out in the wash. So it's all fine. So I'm certainly okay with how you're thinking about it as sort of $100.
I don't know, my feeble attempt at playing with numbers, if you made it like a $15 a month charge, you look at it that way, it comes out to what, about $185, like 50 cents a day. So that's not unreasonable if you look at it that way. Granted, if I'm paying $75, I don't want to pay basically $110 more, but it's 50 cents a day. I think people in town could swing that.
Bruce?
I think no matter how we slice this is going to be extremely painful.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So,
But and to be clear, right, it's going to be more painful to the people with the smaller bills.
Percentage-wise.
Percentage, but then again,
Percentage-wise,
50
correct.
cents a day or
Correct.
$12 a month is not a lot of money.
So, I mean, I'm trying to be sensitive, right? So most of the people on the lower end of the spectrum are gonna be the senior citizens in town, right? They're one person, or two, maybe they're two, they don't use a lot of water. There's,
Bruce's point's well taken. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Pick a number, it's gonna be painful.
and it's going to get progressively painful.
Yeah, that's,
I mean,
yeah, that's the part.
next year when the debt service starts to get tacked on, it's going to get worse.
What a fabulous asset.
It's a liability. Cornell, but I could feel you almost walking yourself to lessen the pain. 75, doubling it to 150 it's not gonna change much. I'm quibbling over a lousy $25, but 75 to 150 just sounds, I don't know. But I'll go along with what everybody says.
Well, so what was your, Cornell, what was your recommendation? What did you come down to?
I didn't have, I mean,
Or-
I would, my initial, I gave the 150 zero as 3 different options. My first pick would be the 100. If it was 4 to 1 for 50, I wouldn't
Now, look, I'm not
cry.
gonna,
I mean,
Bruce is right. It doesn't matter. Pick a number. It's gonna be bad.
I mean, I would go with 100. I mean,
So make it 175.
that's what I would do, yeah, 175.
Is that seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, it's
I
about
mean, and keep,
about
and keep
15
in
bucks a
mind,
month.
by adding that on, that does reduce the impact of the rate, right? So, I mean, you're gonna get an increase anyway. It's just a matter whether or not it's based on usage or whether or not it's gonna be part of the flat fee.
Yeah.
I did run one other set of numbers, and I'm trying to find them.
Okay, as you, look,
So here you
Yeah,
go.
okay,
So, again, this is based on the 2016 usage numbers. If you did the $100 fee, there would be a delta of about $46 from your usage. Right, and this is as a town aggregate, right? This is the town in 2016 metered 85,000 and change gallons of water from New Jersey American, was in the bill. 85,157 thousandths. There's actually 3 more zeros on the end of that. It's really 8 million. But we're billing by 1,000 units, so that's why it comes out that way. So if you do the 100 fixed, the rate difference is 46. If you do a 50 fee, the rate difference would become 105.
What's the difference when you call? You're still paying it, so.
Yeah, but the impact on the lower end
The
is
impact on the
significant
lower end is more
because,
significant than on the higher end, correct?
yeah, I mean, look, it's unfortunate, but what Bruce was getting at, I believe, is there's no reason to get too caught up in the weeds here. This is gonna get a lot more painful in a very short period of time. I think what you have recommended is best we can do under these circumstances.
Hey, Randy, do you have the ability to put the fee in to come up with the rate for the ordinance with the spreadsheet you sent
Yes, I
for tonight?
can go back to my office.
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
So you wanted to increase the flat fee to 175.
Correct.
How about the well users?
So the way I had,
that
oh,
also
so
increase by $100?
we need to do an adjustment to the well users, right? Because they have for the ones without a meter. So
let's clarify, these are people that do not get a sewer bill, do not get a water bill from New Jersey American Water, but still use the sewer.
correct.
And
So
what I would suggest on that, if you come up with, if the rate for the usage increases, they're already gonna pay the extra fee, the $100. If the rate increases by 10%, 15%, just take that difference and add that to the
Well, what I
assuming
did.
averages.
So what I did, and again, this was modeled off of 2016, what I did was I took the average, so I plugged in the rate that we came to for the metered users, right? And then that gave their bill amount, right? How much their bill was gonna be. From that, I knocked off the top 50 and the bottom 50, and I took an average of the ones remaining in between
Right.
and used that to formulate the fixed rate. So you get rid of the outliers that have no usage, right? You get rid of the car wash or whatever other business that's paying $30,000 for the year, right? You take those big outliers out of the equation, you average off the remaining customers, and that is the rate.
Okay, so if I come up with a rate, you have that on your laptop there?
So I do not with the new numbers that you sent later or earlier this evening.
Yeah, usage typically is not gonna vary a large amount. You know, people are creatures of habit. So from year to year, those do not, the usages don't fluctuate too much.
So here's what I did. So this does not take into account the $100 that we discussed.
Right.
Although I probably could do a quick copy and paste while we're talking. The rate would calculate to $22 per thousand, up from the $16.60 that it is today, and that's assuming no $100 change. It would change the flat residential rate to $639, up from $440. Because I don't think that number has been adjusted in a while either, as a side note. And I also broke out the commercial users. And the commercial average is actually 1,500, up from 5.25. So the commercial rate, we'd been charging them 5.25. I don't remember how we came to that number. But if you look at the average, although I don't believe I took out that one monster 24,000 bill, so maybe if we take that out, it becomes a more reasonable number. But again, I was kind of doing this while we were doing consent.
Randy, I mean, it's, for the public, I mean, it's critical, this has to be passed tonight in order for
Can
the
I,
budget.
Yeah,
can I make a suggestion here? We have to
Sure.
go back into private session. Perhaps we can bring this back up after private session, when they've had a chance to work out the numbers?
We have to,
come back
we have
out
to,
to
We would
open.
have to come back
we
up
have to have a
open it.
number tonight in
No, but what I
open.
would suggest is I would let Randy go
And
and
see,
he can go
and if
crunch
Randy
some
can make it
numbers,
by the time we
can
finish.
Continue with the rest of the stuff.
And we'll see, if you're not ready, well,
Yeah.
then,
Okay.
thanks a lot.
So-
Yeah, just also on a practical note for this, I have to have it before 11 a.m., like, because I have to get my
No,
ad
no,
in.
I understand. So,
Right,
just
so
so-
let Randy do what he's gonna
Yeah.
do, and,
So, I mean, you know, Nancy mentioned it earlier, right? The state told us we had to have this in place. We were operating under the presumption that we could start working on this sewer rate after the budget passed. This was gonna be my work for 2 weeks from now. I learned about this yesterday or Monday.
Monday.
So I've been
fair enough.
trying to do this, and we didn't actually have the 2017 numbers until late Tuesday or even today.
In either case, first off,
Usage
thank
numbers,
you for
so-
doing this.
So we've been, so some of this is a little bit on the fly, and then we also discovered from a budgeting perspective, by the way, we do have another issue on the budget. We're targeting needing 2,014,000 and change. We have to provision for delinquencies.
So we need a
And-
reserve.
And we can't short ourselves. And I think, what was the delinquency rate we had to do, 10%?
It was, last year was 7.7% was our delinquency, so we're suggesting 10% because as rates go up, so will delinquencies.
Right, so which means we kind of really need to charge 2.3 in order to ensure that we get the 2.1 that we're appropriating for.
This is kind of a
It's-
stab
this
in
is-
the
this
dark,
is-
right?
This is one of those, and it only affects us the first year until.
Oh, well, you have to have that delinquent, you have to prepare for
Yeah,
that
but once
delinquency
you,
every
but
year.
once you got the budget up and running, you're in a little bit better shape. So Randy is crunching some numbers on that also, because we should be able to recognize last year's delinquencies as revenue for this year, or at least some portion of it. So then you're really only talking about making up that gap, and it's not something I think we have an option on, unfortunately. It's just one of those line items that has to be in your budget.
Well, Has to be.
It's like the reserve for uncollected
Yeah,
taxes in
right,
your regular
right.
budget.
We have that in the municipal budget as well.
All right, so let's go to discussion item, schoolhouse rental RFP. I don't know, is
That's
that you,
mine,
Nancy?
yeah.
All right.
I know that it's been brought up several times that we might have somebody to rent out the schoolhouse. We think, knock on wood, we have the heat fixed. We don't know if the air conditioner works yet because it hasn't been warm enough in order to test it. But Jack and I were talking, and because this is a public building, it would have to be bid out in order to rent it. And normally you award to the lowest bidder, but here you want to award to the highest bidder. So we're going to have to put out a bid documents. But what you need to decide today is what the minimum monthly rent will be, what the term of the lease would be, and if you have any conditions that you want to subject the lease to.
So, if we don't get any proposals for this, what happens?
Yeah, then we can negotiate privately.
Okay, so, how much space are we talking about? Is it 1,200, 1,400 square feet?
Yeah, it's about, I think 1,200, I think, just thinking about
Is
it.
it that big?
But you had mentioned it's a bit of a challenging space.
Right, so you've got some issues there, parking and, you know, the
Yeah.
public access of
And
the other
no
side
Wi-Fi.
that somebody would have to accommodate.
Mhm.
You know, you could put it out there at $20 a square foot, minimum 2 years, and see what you get. I mean, that's below market, and that's not a very long term.
What is market approximately for something like that?
Well, I mean, it depends on the condition of the building, right? A, B, or C. This would be probably in the C category. You know, you could get as high as $30 a square foot, $35 a square foot, you know, but you could get as low as, 12 or 14, right? So this is somewhat in the middle because it's renovated space. It's just not ideal, from an office perspective because of the parking and the access.
So you're talking about $2,400 if it's 1,200 square feet? Which
Yeah,
I
so-
didn't think it was that big, but
Yeah, it depends on how big it is.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to look. I mean, I thought,
I mean, the
Thinking about it.
architectural drawing should tell you how big it is.
I thought it was probably like 1,000 to 1,200. I thought all
so
in.
then you're talking about 2,000, at least 2,000?
Right.
I mean, I could do it based on a square footage, like a $20 a square foot.
So then, so if that goes out, and then we
No,
don't get any better.
if nothing comes back,
we can
Jack
do-
said we can
do
negotiate
private.
privately.
Okay.
Sound good,
We
Jack?
have to do it twice, I'll double check.
And,
Okay.
But we can.
All right.
and a 2-year lease, Bruce, is that kind of standard, or would you go to a year?
Well, I mean, as the landlord, you want longer,
Mhm.
right? You want 3 to 5 years. But given the space is a little challenging, to attract somebody, you want to put it out there with a shorter lease in the anticipation that maybe, somebody new would take the space, startup or something
We could
like
include
that.
an option to
You could include an option.
extend, but
Right.
for the
But
renter,
usually it's their option.
rentee, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sound good? And Jack, you can clarify if we have to go out twice. Well, we don't have to do it right now, we'll just carry on. The alarm systems and e-ticketing, I think that's the chief?
Yep.
Chief, I turn the mic over to you.
Good evening, Chief Naga, along with Township Police Department. A couple things came up. The ordinance as it currently stands for the alarm summonses, it's come up repeatedly. The verbiage in it does not dictate a specific amount of false alarms before a summons is issued. One of the residents brought that up to us last year, that it's kind of open to interpretation. So she had requested that there's a recommendation to set a specific number of false alarms prior to being issued a summons. That way the residents know up front, and they have an idea of what they're going up against when they do fill out that application for alarm permit. So The police department years ago had suggested that 5 false alarms would be the number. That was just what the department did, but it's not part of the ordinance, so I don't know that it's quite enforceable, as it's not dictated by the ordinance. Maybe Mr. Pigeon could give some guidance on that.
5 seems a lot.
Yeah.
Is that total ever, or are we talking per year?
That's annual.
Okay.
Annual.
I would lower it to 3.
This is home alarm?
Man, you're mean.
This is any false alarms, burglar alarms for businesses or residents.
Sometimes have a graduated scale. You know, you get the first one for free, the second one, the fine's $25, third one is $100, whatever.
I'm only laughing because I think I still have a copy of when we put the alarm system in. So I received a summons, and I deserved it as well.
Should've fought it.
What do you recommend, Chief? We should have what, fought it?
Do you get
Spoken like a lawyer.
many more than 5 a year? I mean, are
We
there?
we really don't, but what happens is, as maybe I think in this case, the person was away, they had a problem with the alarm system. They, for whatever reason, they didn't want to deactivate it. Now the residents felt that it was part of the police responsibility to check on the residents, which we have a mechanism in place to check on houses that where residents are away on vacation. But she felt that she was already paying for the service by having a police department and did not want to be issued a summons. So I get it, nobody's really happy to receive a summons, but again, the false alarms is what we're trying to cut out. We obviously want to respond, and we do respond to every single one. Some towns do not respond. If it's canceled before the officer gets there, they don't count it. But in the circumstance that either is residents or a resident in jeopardy or some kind of safety concern, we want to respond and verify physically that everything's okay. So
I think it's more than reasonable. I'll defer, but I don't know, to your
Yeah.
number. What number?
I think 5 is what the residents that are aware of it have been used to. I don't really have a reason to change that. I don't know what
Okay.
what the consensus is, but I think 5 is more than reasonable.
Everybody seems to agree, so 5 it is. Jack will work on the ordinance.
For the next,
And it's just, I mean, there's still discretion, so it's not an always, but it's still an idea, so they know up front that it's 5.
I think it's more than reasonable. And this comes from somebody who violated the 5, so.
The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention was the option or the opportunity for the police department to go to e-ticketing. And I know Mr. Sandow just did a phenomenal study in the newspaper, took, I think, a one-page ad to discuss how long it takes a police officer to write a summons, and he did the math. It's on a productivity basis, there's a safety basis, there's an efficiency basis.
What exactly is e-ticketing?
So e-ticketing, right now, currently, there's a carbon copy. We get a book, with carbon copies of summonses for motor vehicle violations or ordinances. And the officer, if he pulls over a vehicle, has to do a couple checks, check the license, do some other checks. And then if they decide to issue summons, they'll start to write out these carbon copies or, handwritten summonses. There's been issues with wrong court dates. There's been issues that I'm sure committee member Matt Dorsey would tell you. There's been reasons for dismissals on errors, whether it be court date or signatures or the wrong license plate, a character in the plate. So there's right. So there's issues that the defense attorney is like, it's probably going to hurt his business a little bit, but so it's very efficient. It's automatically entered for the court system. The officers basically would scan the license, everything would get uploaded automatically. We've moved to an electronic criminal complaint system, ECDR, and we believe this is the direction that's also going for motor vehicle summonses.
How does a person know they received the ticket?
There's a thermal printer in the vehicle, in the police vehicle, and it'll actually print out a copy of the ticket for them.
So they don't have to handwrite the ticket anymore.
Right.
Okay, but there's still,
So they scan the license, basically click, it's a touch screen, they'll click on the violations, and they issue the.
so there will be a piece of paper.
There'll be a piece of paper, the rest of it for police and court,
So for those of us who get pulled over, not that I have ever been pulled over, we'll still have the joy of seeing the officer come to the car without anything in their hand, knowing that you have.
correct, there's an indication, if you're looking in your rearview mirror, there's an indication whether or not you you receive the summons. But also, probably one of the most dangerous times for an officer and a motorist
Sure.
is during that motor vehicle stop where they get out of the car and they're interacting. That's when a lot of officers have been either injured or, been, or passed away in the line of duty on those areas. Now, we're not on 78, so it's not as dangerous, but of course it has its issues. There is a study by CSI that's done. The costs involved are basically for the equipment. No specific company is making any money off of this service. It's provided through the county system. It's called CSI, is the group that manages our record management system. It's at cost. My understanding now, this is their reflection that it costs roughly $3 per hard copy summons right now, and it's roughly would be the same cost for an electronic ticket. So there's a lot of benefits. There's probably all the benefits, and I think having the officer spend more time in the neighborhoods and less time on the side of the road writing these summonses would be beneficial to the police and to the community. And there's about 15 towns in Morris County out of 28 that are already switched over to e-ticket. We think at some point it's going to be mandatory. We don't know when, but when that happens, we're really not going to have all these options that we have before us
You
today.
beat me to it. Not that, I
Right.
love when Long Hill is the leader in something. But I was going to ask, are there other towns going in this direction? And I think you
There's-
just answered it.
Right. I mean, locally, New Providence, Summit, Mendham, Randolph, Roxbury, Morris Township, Morris Plains, Morristown. There's a lot of towns that do have it already. So we're a little bit behind, but I'd like to
Okay.
get us up to speed and be a little bit more efficient.
Can I ask a dumb question here? Why do you need us? I mean, isn't this the operation of the police department?
I believe so, but I think it's also maybe an opportunity for you to have a little bit of input. And there's some budgetary
I
issues
think he
potentially.
needs money. He needs money.
Was it not in your capital requests?
It wasn't, because I did not get involved really, or I didn't get the quote until after my capital request was in. And I don't know that, on the financial end of it, I wish Randy was here because we've had a couple of discussions. My understanding, like I said, currently it costs about $3 a summons for the printed copy, for the hard copy. It would roughly be about the same. So I don't know on that end of the budget how it would have to change or how we can move forward. but-
We could talk offline about that.
How many
So-
But
sorry.
there's an $18,000 upfront cost though, right?
But the $18,000 is paid off by
The royalties.
the royalty
So,
from the
no,
tickets, right?
so the option is roughly $18,000 upfront or a pay-as-you-go program, 0% interest.
How many tickets are issued a year in Long Hill?
I don't remember what the final number is for 2017. The quarterly report for this year, I believe we're at just under 360 summonses.
So quarterly, fine, so maybe a little
Do
more.
the royalty fees, they come out of the court costs?
I'm not sure what the appropriate method, I guess, of accounting or
Well, my other question is, when you guys do the accident reports, will this help you fill in the accident reports too?
it absolutely uploads all the information into our records management system. So
Right now, when you do an accident report, you guys still filling that by hand or data entry?
it's electronic, but you're still punching in numbers, and we've had mistakes. Not to say that there's never going to be a mistake,
No.
but it will speed up the process for both the officers, the records clerk, the court clerk, the tracking. For all data is going to be expedited through e-ticketing.
So from a budgetary perspective, we don't have this in the budget, so there's really no way to fund it this year. So while there are some things some projects that were put in the budget, if by the end of the year, middle of the year, it's apparent that those aren't gonna happen, then maybe we could transfer the money and fund it then. But as of right now, we don't have a line.
We're talking $18,000, right?
We have a very tight budget.
You can't change the budget now.
We can't change our budget, we
do the
can't
budget.
add to it, no.
Yes. But
So this isn't an option right now.
but there is an $18,000 check that has to be written up front on this?
No, there isn't.
So there isn't, right?
Now, assuming you're willing to give them a royalty.
No, it's in there.
But it's-
No,
There's
it's
some
in there.
royalty in the contract. There's like a $3 royalty
Until
until
18,000.
it's paid off, and then it's like
until
a dollar something after
So
that.
whether
Until
whether it takes
$18,000.
20 years or 2 months to pay the $3 per summons fee, there's no interest involved, there's no,
Right. But what's the dollar after?
No, once it's paid off,
Yeah.
then they're still getting a royalty of like a dollar something.
Why?
Why not? They're in the business to make money, the company that's selling it to
Yeah.
us.
But they're making money on the fact that they sold it.
They did, but now that they're smart and they back-ended it, so they're still getting royalties.
So what
subscription service.
happens if we buy it?
They still need software and everything else.
So if you buy it, it's cheaper in the long run to
Do I
the,
still
to
The
have,
the,
service
do we
fee,
still have
the-
that, do we
the
still have that
$1.50
royalty?
I see.
Yeah, we have a
the
dollar
service fee still applies.
after the $18,000 is paid off.
Nancy, perhaps you could just outline the different
Yeah.
option for us and we can look
Right.
at this
Well,
and
you know
figure
what?
out.
Randy just walked in, so he can explain this so much better than I, because we talked about it so many times.
It's a licensing, and it's
No,
it's
it,
$3 hardware cost, $3 to the hardware costs are recouped. Then after that, it's $1.50 per ticket will be applied to the software licensing and ongoing maintenance. So
Right.
basically,
So there's no check
if we're paying
written.
$3
It just-
a ticket
you
now,
pay it
it's-
off of the royalty.
That's right. It's
So
all-
why would
it's
we
all-
delay? it? You said the magic word as far as I'm concerned, safety. And I know you're not on 78, but you drive by, there's an officer on Long Hill Road. It's a danger.
I've actually been struck by a vehicle on the side of the road issuing a summons, so
Yeah.
I do know.
If there's no check written, why are we debating this?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
so I'm gonna ask Randy to come up, because there are procedural issues with how you have to pay for this. And we have looked at this every way we possibly could and can't come up with a way to, this is the e-ticketing, yeah. So if you could address the funding issue.
Okay, I understand the concept of you're gonna be charged per ticket, therefore the revenue's coming in on the one side. However, you cannot take revenue and pay an expense off the revenue, especially when it comes to court fees, who the administration of courts oversees those courts, okay? The e-ticket system is not a court mechanism or a court expense. It's a law enforcement expense. The AOC would have tremendous issues and would, quite honestly, would not allow you to use revenue coming in from the court system to expense the item. What you need to do is have an appropriation on the expense side to pay for that. Now, will the revenue that comes in
Cover it.
technically offset that? Yes, that
I
certainly
get it.
is the way that this system works, but you have to separate it as an appropriation and a revenue.
I don't know.
In
who
other
the-
words, we can't spend money on a future revenue. Right?
Well, I mean, if.
It's a
if-
future revenue. He hasn't issued the ticket yet. So
Right,
there's no way
but-
we can spend that money.
But
But
if
you're not
you have
spending
an
money until the ticket's
appropriation,
written.
if you have an appropriation for it, you could just buy the system.
Right.
Right. That's,
it'd be
but-
done.
But we can appropriate for
Well,
police cars too.
except for the $1.50
Which
royalty.
is the ongoing maintenance.
Maintenance
Yeah,
money.
it's the
Correct.
royalty, maintenance,
So
Right,
there's,
so that would
there's
be-
an ongoing royalty, and I
This,
kinda
this,
have-
this,
And that would be an ongoing expense
Are
that
there- are there
the
any-
police would have to include that in their annual
Right.
budget.
Are there any other systems that don't have the like I want to buy it and then we use it? Like, I don't want to give anybody a cut of.
There's any other town. First off, I don't know who the AOC is, but it has to be it has to be a lawyer.
yes, bean counters for court.
That I know.
Probably the accountant.
Where's Serenelli?
But we can't do it because we've got to put an appropriation line on the
Right.
budget in order to pay
Fine.
the fees, which we don't have in the budget. You'd be rewriting the entire municipal budget.
Chief, does any other town do it where they buy their own system? Does everybody do it by the way you've described?
I spoke with several towns today, and they do it this way. It's an ongoing fee for the software that you're using.
That's fine. Look, I hate that we have to wait, but it appears we do. November is when we,
Well, we can do transfer, if we haven't spent $18,000 in something else.
But in
We-
November, though,
Yeah, we can't
now.
do it until, we
But-
can't do it
but
now.
can we do the appropriation for the service maintenance fee as well?
But it sounds to me like there's, I mean, it's just on paper essentially, the appropriation, right? Because we're not actually spending any money, but does that make a difference to the budget? Okay,
You'd have to resubmit it,
Okay.
and that's the issue.
right.
We'd have to reintroduce the
You
budget.
have to do an amendment and
which
then
we
a
can't
new
do
public
because-
hearing.
Because we're already under the gun. It would require another renoticing and.
It's unfortunate because of the transition.
It's just 'cause of the time.
You-
No,
you-
I get it.
Yeah,
And that's, but I fully support it, and, you know, to your point, I don't care that it's not 78. It's Long Hill Road, it's Marsville Road, it's any road for
Yep.
that matter.
And this, just to be clear, this is part of the reason why we ask for a 5-year capital projection every year.
Yeah, but we're talking about a transition in
I-
leadership.
And I
Understood.
get, I understand, I'm actually telling you guys, not him.
Thanks, Bruce.
All right.
Thank you.
Chief, thanks for bringing it up, but please, if we could, Nancy, make a note of this.
Oh, he reminds me all the time. We talk about it every day.
All right. Oh, this, oh, just when I thought we were done,
Oh, no, we
put
moved
the
that.
sewer. Kleinfelder.
No, we're going to put that off until either May 9th or May
Oh.
23rd.
Geez, joy.
Well, hold on. Can we?
Can we?
We can't do it until we adopt the budget.
Yeah, we have to adopt the, well, no, we have to adopt the bond. The bond ordinance has to be passed before we can award a professional
Oh, right,
service
okay.
agreement.
That one. I was thinking the
yeah.
other topic
Dear Lord, thank you.
of,
So,
Staffing.
let's move on to old business.
no, but the staffing is an issue for the budget
Well,
because it changes the required revenue.
Oh, for the, yep.
it changes the expenditure.
It changes our revenue requirement because our expenditures go up.
Do you want me to talk about it?
Can we?
And do we have to do it tonight?
We do.
If it's a budget thing.
Right.
We have to set the rate in order to
Yep.
get the budget going.
Yep.
However,
need
we
to-
may have an issue because if we're fundamentally changing the wastewater operating budget.
Cornell, could you explain to the public why? I mean, this is, we
So,
can't have a
sorry,
private
we're,
conversation.
yeah, so I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but we had 3 wastewater staff members down at the wastewater plant. We were already light 2, and we've been advertising for those 2 positions. But since our last meeting, one of the remaining 3 people has resigned and has put us in a precarious position of not actually having a licensed operator, which we have remedied for the short term at great expense by using a service that the DEP has approved. However, complicating things is we've been advertising for 2 weeks for a new wastewater plant operator lead, and we have received 0 resumes. So we have an issue with staffing the wastewater plant. And one of the discussion topics that we have to deal with is we have a short-term issue of having to pay, and I guess I'm allowed to reveal the
Yes.
number, right?
Yes.
$115 an hour for a licensed operator. Otherwise, the DEP will fine us $1,000 a day. And the DEP called us the day after the person resigned and said, "You are not in compliance." So we really don't have a whole heck of a lot of choice in the matter. So we're incurring an expense of $115 an hour in order to stay compliant. That still leaves us way short-staffed. So,
Well, it leaves us, okay, so with the one person who's come in from Natural System Utilities, we are at the same level of staffing that we were at all year. The person, the company's charging us $115 an hour through the end of April, because that's what we did for short term. They've given us a proposal for May, for the month of May, at $102 an hour. But we're going to need to do something longer term. You still need to discuss whether you want to go out for, to put out a bid to operate the facility on a full-time basis. But in the meantime, we're going to have to staff it. If we, as we discussed earlier, if we get a contract through the end of the year, presumably it will be less than $102 an hour. I'm going to put Randy on the spot because we had, in this year's sewer budget, we had enough money for 3 extra people, I believe.
I believe it was a total of
2,
5.
total of 5.
Total of 5, but we already have 2.
No, at the time we did it, we had 3. The resignation was only,
Well, right, so it's a total of 5, but now we
Total of
only
5.
have 2 people,
Correct.
2.5. So I'm wondering how much that is that we were paying them. Tom probably knows off the top of his head, because that money is already accounted for. So if that money is equal to what we would be paying this company to cover us for the rest of the year, then we really don't have to make a big adjustment.
Well, the rest of the year is approximately $142,000 from May through December.
Right, so we've
2/3
got-
of the year, 2,080 hours a year, $102 an hour.
So we're talking about 3 employees, we're talking about pension and benefits as well. We're not just talking about their salaries.
Still fully loaded, we're not 142.
so the other thing that I just,
But we might be pretty close.
so the other thing that I just thought of that might get us out of the immediate crunch, in the current budget, and Randy, you need to confirm whether we can do this, we have the $450,000 that we were trying to put into the bank to prepare for the future capital expenses
In the utility budget.
in the utility budget. We could just earmark that as general revenue and surplus, and if needed for staffing, could we use that?
Certainly make it would be a transfer towards the end of the year.
Right, from one line budget to the other.
Which is probably when we would need it, is
Right.
towards November anyway.
Now, that of course creates the obvious problem of, well, that means then we're not gonna have enough money, scurried away in the corner for when we actually have to start doing repairs. But either way, we're gonna have to spend this money, and I think this just, by taking this approach, this just allows us to move forward with the budget as is, without having to amend, reintroduce, renotice.
Well, plus, I think if we look at those salaries, I mean, for the lead operator, we put in, I think, $90,000 for their salary alone. And then you add in benefits that we had to budget for, and then there were 2 other employees. So, I mean, I think it's going to be close.
Okay, well, then even better, so. I mean, as long as we have a way that we don't have to worry about it and don't have to change the sewer budget, I'm happy. But not that we missed it, right, and introduced a sewer budget that doesn't cover what we need, but I think we're okay, even in a worst-case scenario. And then I believe we're going back into exec to discuss, to continue the rest of the discussion around contract.
Okay.
So,
I had a report.
are we back on sewer again
Yes. for ordinance.
now? So
Oh, right.
now that Randy's back and probably has some numbers, I will make actually a suggestion, although it would probably have a nominal impact, since we've gone and raised the flat fee by $100. Do we want to entertain raising the senior discount,
What is it now?
$15? To cushion the blow to the seniors?
Absolutely.
And what would you,
It's,
Since we're
would make
doubling,
sense?
since we're more than doubling, I would say to keep the ratio the same.
okay, so then that would be,
Raise it to,
raise it to 40?
Yeah, it's 8 or 9%, I guess, right?
Yeah.
15 of 75.
Yeah, it's rough, it doesn't have to be exact. I mean, 100% is 30.
right,
Yeah,
but
then some.
the increase is more than 30, so
Right, anyway,
40, 50, I'm fine with either.
my head is so, oh, man, what happened here? Sorry, I'm getting a spinning hourglass, I can't do anything.
All right, but the number is going to be the
Like
number.
35 or
It'd
40.
be, yeah, like 35.
40?
Yeah.
35 is fine.
35?
40?
40.
40 is good. I'm
40,
fine with
that's fine.
40.
This way, they're really only seeing a $75 increase
Yeah.
on the flat fee,
Yep,
right?
yep.
All right, I literally just locked up. This isn't supposed to happen to a Mac.
Yeah, okay. It's the spinning wheel of death.
Yeah, spinning wheel of death is right.
All right, so senior raised from 15 to 40, we agree?
Yep,
And now we're going to turn it over to Randy?
yep.
Okay.
Going on the basis of Kamir and Schuler's logic here, what I did is take
You're in
it.
trouble now.
I don't know. You can figure it out. Just, but what I did was I separated the commercial users and the residential, and applied commercial to commercial. So I dropped the lowest 5, the highest 5,
Okay.
which is about 5% of the
Okay.
total. That averaged out to 1,227, so I recommend a commercial rate of 1,200. And it seems that those commercial properties that did have well with sewer wasn't paying their fair share, if you will, based on other
Right.
commercial users.
What was the number? You said you
The-
put out, what, $1,200? What was it before?
5 1/4.
5.25.
This is for the well user?
This is for
Commercial
commercial
well.
well
Right,
water.
Right.
okay.
And based on,
Connected to the sewer system.
Right, we talked about 1,500.
based on the residential use, it wouldn't have that, as much of an impact. It came out to a total of 577 and change, so I would recommend a 575 rate.
And that would be up from 440.
That would be up from 440. This takes
So
into
is that-
consideration a $100 increase to the 75 to 175, and that will leave an option for the meter rate of 1827, which would bring in an estimated 2,043,000, which is about 30,000 more than what Cornell spreadsheets were showing.
Does that take into consideration delinquency?
It does not take into consideration delinquency, but it gives us a $30,000 cushion for what we expect
From
to
last year.
collect. So
Okay.
the 30,000, I think, will be enough cushion from delinquencies from last year to the increases this year and offset that.
Okay. I'm sorry, what was the rate amount?
Commercial rate, 1,200,
No,
Oh.
the per gallon.
1827.
1827.
1827,
And
okay.
that was up from 1660.
So, any consideration, I think you brought it up possibly, a different rate for commercial and residential? On the basis that commercial is more caustic for
I
sewer
thought
system?
because it was mid-year, we were going to hold off on that until next year.
Well, we actually have the data to do that, right?
Do have the data.
Yeah.
The meter rate is a 10% increase, 10% differential from 17 to 18, going from 1661 up to 1827.
Right, but that's assuming that you do constant for
Correct.
constant rate.
For-
But we
for
could,
commercial
we
and-
are able to, we now have we didn't yesterday morning, but we now have the data where we could create a separate usage rate for commercial and residential as well. Correct?
Correct.
And the logic behind that is that they're,
So, you got chemicals, you got, the restaurants are putting grease. It's a little bit more
wear and tear.
wear and tear. I mean, I think that's fairly common. Tom, do you have any
But not all,
insight on that at all? You can nod your head no if you want to nod.
not all commercial businesses do that, though, right?
Right, I mean, some, like restaurants in particular, they have grease traps and things like that to prevent that type of pollutant from getting into the sewer.
So, someone
You know.
mentioned it, I don't know
Yeah,
who, so I just
yeah.
wanted to bring it out on the table. I
I'd rather not make this type of decision under this sort of rests.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
should leave it, yeah.
I thought we had said
Consistent.
we would bring it up
Yeah.
again next year when we've had time to
We
reflect
did-
upon it.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
And you may want to look at the types of business. I mean, I know a town that has 10 to 12 different commercial rates depending on the type of business.
Right.
If you have an office,
Right.
you know, what's so different about a residential with an office?
Probably less usage.
But probably less
Right.
usage. But again, like, if you have a dry cleaner or a restaurant, they may put more tension in the system where they would have to clean the pipes
And
more often.
that's a very fair point, and it's more complex than just doing it
Yeah.
9/10. When we've
No, I
talked
agree with you
about
there.
sewer as much as I'd like to talk about it.
I agree
more.
with you.
More than I'd like, okay, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Wanted to raise it as a discussion point, that's all.
All right, so where does that leave us, Cornell?
Where does that leave us? That leaves us plugging in a service fee of $175 per year per unit.
Correct.
That leaves us at, all commercial. All right, so hold on a second. A and B are the same thing, just for commercial and residential,
Right,
right?
we split them out because
So
we're
it's-
talking about it, so
okay,
we can
okay,
put those
so-
back together.
So,
if you
so
want.
one, no, so let's leave 175 and 175 for A and B.
Okay,
So the base service fee is the same for
Same.
commercial and residential.
right.
The residential users that are metered shall be charged a usage fee at, what did you say, Randy?
1827.
1827?
1827 per thousand. The gallons used shall be the total water metered actual usage for the 6 winter months preceding the year, so the January, March, October through December. Okay? And to be clear, Jack, this is the usage of, not the bill of,
That's the way I read it, and I think that was the intent of the committee.
right? We wanted to isolate out sprinkler months.
Yep.
So so the version I'm looking at still has September usage in
They
it.
do, and we can change that, but unfortunately, it's not a quick change where I can do in a half hour to an
Okay.
hour. But we will do that before bills go out.
Okay, do we think that that is going to substantively change the rate?
The usage, no.
Well,
I think the usage will remain pretty constant for those adjustments of those 2 months.
but if you're taking out the September, which is a sprinkler, fairly heavy sprinklering month for those that have sprinklers, your gallon usage is gonna drop, which means you're not gonna generate enough revenue at the same rate. Right? The question is how much?
Yeah, that's the unknown.
Right.
That's the unknown factor. You know, if you take a
wanna
2%
leave- Do we want to
differential.
leave those months intact for this year, since we've got to introduce this tonight,
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a way to do it, right? Leave them intact.
and get the change next year?
So what months are we talking about here?
So the usage is supposed to be the usage of October, November, December. Well, let me start at the beginning of the year. January, February, March, and October, November, December. The data that's currently captured is actually the usage of December 16, January 17, February 17, and September 17, October 17, and November 17.
It's based on the bills from
Right,
those
so,
months.
so,
It measures the
so,
prior
so,
month's
so,
usage.
so the data that we have that's calculating the rate is based upon the bills for January, February, March.
So it's October through March, basically? You want, October through March?
Yeah, but not the 6 consecutive months. You
Right.
want the January and the December
first
from the
quarter and
same
fourth
year.
quarter.
First quarter and fourth quarter, right? Because you're billing for 2017.
Okay, so paragraph 1, section C changes.
The October goes back to September.
Right.
So,
Since that's,
so
since the
what,
calculations
so
are done on those months, I
can
think,
we
at this
just,
point.
can we just leave it the way it is?
I
and-
That's
think-
exactly right.
Since it was done that way anyway.
Right, okay, so,
And it changed
right.
the process.
See what it comes out. If it works out okay, then
I
use
think
the
it will,
appropriate
and I-
numbers, and if it doesn't,
Yeah,
then just
and
fall
I
back
think
to
it will,
what we have.
because you got December of 16, which is typically a little higher month for usage of people because of the holidays. So you're replacing
Okay,
that with
yeah,
March,
fair point.
and then you gotta have,
Okay.
pick up December and drop off. So I think roughly we're gonna remain pretty constant.
Okay,
As long as it works,
Okay.
you can use those months.
all right, so we're changing D,
You're changing C1 and D1.
you're changing C1 to be the 18, no, we're leaving that alone. We're just gonna, we're not changing, and he'll try it, and if it doesn't, then he'll just use the numbers that he has. rather
So
than
we're not
the
changing
order.
that October in C1
No.
to September?
No,
Okay.
you're filling the number in C.
Back up. Don't confuse her. We're not changing the current ordinance.
Right.
What's written here
Is
gets
correct.
deleted.
No,
No.
this is the current ordinance.
This is the current ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah,
Then why is it Q1 and 4? Why are we talking about Q1 and 4? Why? Not Q4?
Because the data that's currently being used is,
To arrive at the rates.
to derive at the rate does not match what is here.
Okay.
But he's gonna go back and use those correct
Okay.
dates.
Okay.
So C is, 1827?
27,
D is also gonna be 1827.
correct.
We need to.
E.
Metered is going to be whatever you said it was gonna be,
575 and 1200.
Right.
And then H.
and then H, we're actually gonna change to 40.
Correct.
I feel good about that. Okay, so we need a motion
Motion
All
to
right.
introduce.
for
So-
second reading.
So motion to introduce ordinance 418-18. Do I have to read in these numbers?
As,
I mean, I
I think
can,
they've already
As
been-
discussed.
They're
already been
As
read into
discussed.
On the record.
Yep.
So we, oh,
Do
Cornell,
we-
you could second.
Second? Oh, gee, thanks.
Committeeman Maringolo,
yes.
Committeeman Ray,
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey,
Yes.
Mayor Pasorcia.
Yes,
All right,
Second reading is May 9th.
the public hearing
Second
for
reading.
May 9th.
that is correct. For those who did not hear, Debbie, the second reading is May 9th. Okay,
Okay.
old business, new business?
Yeah, totally.
I have a report, a brief.
Okay, so first Nancy will do a brief report, then we'll go to liaison,
You
We did liaison.
not liaison, sorry, old business, new business. I have a couple of things, but go ahead. Sorry, Nancy.
Okay, I just have a couple things. The Mitchell Road Drainage Improvement Project is finally underway. This is close to the intersection with Dougherty. We had the pre-construction meeting today. The work will begin May 7th, probably May 7th, but if not the 7th, it would start the 14th. But the contractor thought they were going to start on the 7th. It will be completed within 60 calendar days. There may be one lane closure, but it's not expected to cause any major traffic problems. Residents and schools will get a notification letter from the contractor, which we will also post on our website about a week before the work begins. We're notified by the county that improvements are planned for the Valley Road Bridge. Morris County and the New Jersey Transportation Planning Authority and the DOT are conducting studies to determine what improvements are needed. This is the Valley Road Bridge that connects Long Hill to Bernard's Township. The two-lane bridge is over 90 years old, almost 90 years old, and it's in poor condition, has structural and functional limitations that don't meet today's design standards. There is a website that you can check out, which is www.valleyroadbridgenj.com to keep up with the project. But there is a public information meeting on Thursday, May 10th, from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. It's an open house format, but there will be a presentation at 6 p.m. That is at the Bernard Township Municipal Building in their council chambers at 1 Collier Lane in Bernard Township. There are also written comments that will be accepted through June 1st, 2018, and the name and address will also be posted on our website. There is a meeting for public officials tomorrow night at the same place that I will be attending. I don't know if anybody up here is attending, but that will be to get, it's kind of, I believe it's like an exploratory meeting, so I'll bring some information back to the rest of the committee and to the township, and then it is open to the public on May 10th. And the last announcement is the Memorial Day parade is on May 28th. It begins at 9:30 a.m. The march line will begin at the corner of Mercer Street and Main Avenue and proceed north up Main Avenue, concluding at Central School for a brief ceremony. Afterwards, everyone is invited back to the Sterling Fire Department on Somerset Street from 11 to 1 for hot dogs and drinks. And there is a Sterling Lake open house on the same day from 1:30 to 4:30, and all residents are invited to join us at Sterling Lake for an afternoon of picnicking and swimming. That's all I have.
Thank you, Nancy. Old, new? Just a couple of things. I spoke with Ms. Kerry Flug. I think everybody up here knows her. For those of the public who obviously would not know her, she's the director of the Office of Local Government Assistance with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I'll be meeting with her tomorrow afternoon to discuss various issues, but she was kind enough to offer to either be here herself or she'll have one of her staff members come on the evening of May 23rd, so the second meeting in May, to answer questions about how the DE process works in general, but obviously more specifically to the Tifa property here in town. I want to thank Governor Murphy. He was kind enough to meet with, he provided a roundtable discussion for all the mayors in Morris County on Monday. I think almost every mayor I could see was there. It was a very open and candid dialogue with the governor. The three main topics, no shock, property taxes, school funding, and there you have it yet again, COA. COA was the #1 topic, in fact, even more so than property taxes. So every town is concerned with this. As I said once before, it's not big, small, wealthy, middle, or moderate income, Democrat or Republican. Every town is facing this challenge. Bruce and I attended a meeting with the Morris County League the other day, and Bruce, when every town has to announce whether they're there, so most towns say present here, but when Bruce mentioned that Long Hill was here, he said, Long Hill Township, we have settled our fair share agreement at 54 units. Every mayor or every elected official in the room applauded and made a beeline to us to figure out how we were able to accomplish that. So I know we've mentioned many times in the past how fortunate we are, and I thank Jack and Jessica and everybody who assisted you in that negotiation over the past 18 months. A lot of towns have not. That is the old business, I think. Go ahead.
I know he's got to be at work in like 20 minutes, but while Mr. Sweeney here, I have a question for him. You've got to come. I'd like to ask you, a couple months ago, maybe a month ago, I think somebody here asked you if it was better if we outsourced the running of the sewer plant or we kept it in-house and staffed it up ourselves. I think at that time you said it's probably better to keep it ourselves. Has anything changed since that time, in your opinion?
Well, since the resignation of one of our operators, we have no licensed operators at the plant at this time.
So you're still under the opinion it's still better to staff it up ourselves and try to find these operators, or
Well-
just outsource it and get it done?
My opinion now is you're backed into outsourcing. You have no choice. We've had an ad running for 3 weeks for 2 operators, one on the high end, one on the low end, and we've gotten no response yet. And we need staff there to do the day-to-day operations, payroll, supervision, everything. We don't have that now. There's only so much I can do to take over that. And I don't have enough hours in a day.
Thank you.
You know, so that's it. While I'm up, if I could just make a comment on branch collection.
Absolutely.
Mayor, thank you for that compliment to our department. It's been a big job, but we originally put information out that we were going to collect branches from March 19th to April 6th, which gave residents enough time to put the branches out. After April 6th, we started logging every road that we've collected in town, with the point that once we're done with those roads, we're not going back. The residents have been very good, they've been very cooperative, but there are some that are still putting branches out. You know, we've got to end this. We're on Long Hill Road now. It's about a 5-mile stretch. It's going to take us over a week to get done. I've got to get this done so we can move on to other stuff. So any of the residents that still have branches, they can bring them down to Public Works. We're there during the week. We're there on Saturdays. But we just can't keep going back to these streets and collecting, you know. It is a monumental job, and that's all we've been doing for weeks, but we've got to move on and do other stuff. So, you know, if any residents ask you, bring them down to Public Works. We're almost done on the road.
Tom, again, thank you. Please thank
Thank
your
you.
team. They did a great job.
Okay.
Okay, just a couple of announcements. I think Nancy mentioned the Memorial Day Parade, so she beat me to it.
Sorry.
What's that?
I'm sorry.
No. That was very important, so it's worth bringing up. Again, Memorial Day Parade will happen May 28th, lining up, I think, at 8:30 in the morning. The parade kicks off at 9, give or take, or maybe a little bit thereafter. St. Vincent de Paul is having a blood drive this Monday, April 30th, 3:30 to 8. Please, if you are available and you can make it, that is a critical need that unfortunately probably all of our families at one point in our lives will need to avail ourselves of. So please, if you can, that's this Monday, April 30th, 3:30 to 8 p.m., St. Vincent de Paul. Troop 56 is having their
Flower sale.
flower sale. I'd rather Bruce can announce that rather than me.
Friday evening, May 4th, all day Saturday, May 5th, and Sunday morning, May 6th, in the Valley Mall next to Joseph A. Banks. Flowers, potted plants, hanging baskets, all the money raised goes to support the Boy Scouts.
And the Elks are having their
Garage sale, right?
garage sale. They sell. When is that? This Saturday or?
I'm not sure when that is.
I think it's in May, but I'm not sure.
It's in May usually.
Okay, it's coming up. I don't know, Dennis. You usually have these answers for me. No.
They'll probably put a sign out in front of the Elks anyway.
All right. I didn't want to miss it if I could.
Well, I have another one for you when you're done.
Okay, just one last one for me. The health screening at St. James Church, which is on Finley Avenue in Basking Ridge. Registration April 16th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Do we have, is this going to be on the, on LHTV, Dennis, do you know?
I think it's been up, it's been
It's up there, right?
yeah.
So I'm not going to repeat the number and stuff. Just note the date, well, it started already, obviously. The health screening's May 17th, 7 a.m., 9 a.m. Look on the website, please, and I turn it to Matt.
Saturday night, 3rd Annual Millington Fire Department Comedy Night, 7 p.m. at the firehouse. There will be, beverages, light hors d'oeuvres, and a lot of yucks. It's $35 in advance, $40 at the door, and check out the Millington Fire Company Facebook page for further details.
What's that day?
28th?
And I believe
Yes.
there will be Committeeman Brendan Ray dunk tank.
That's the fourth annual.
All right. So at this point, I'd like to open up the meeting to the public for comments, remarks on any matter. As always, please limit your comments and remarks to 3 minutes. So I open it up.
Kathy O'Leary, Millington. First of all, Mayor Pacercia, thank you for getting Carrie Flug, is it, from the DEP to come?
Yes.
That's going to be, I think, very
Did
helpful.
you need our spelling?
I can find it.
Okay.
That'll be very helpful, and I'm sure that'll answer a lot of people's questions. I know that you're aware of the Sierra Club resolution regarding the rezoning, and I just, you know, we've actually taken the language of the resolution and converted that into a petition. So I just would like to read in the resolves from that resolution, which is, be it resolved, the planning board and the township should ensure that prior to the rezoning of both the Tifa and Barrett's roofing sites, studies regarding traffic runoff and erosion are completed to determine that the development and planned use do not pose a threat to the environment, and specifically the Passaic River. The planning board and township committee should not rezone Tifa's site prior to cleanup according to the New Jersey DEP's standards for residential standards or unrestricted cleanup. The township should not rezone the Barrett's property until a complete investigation of the site has been completed and the property has been remediated to NJDEP standards. There are serious concerns that this proposed development is next to a capped Superfund site. The adequacy of groundwater monitoring to make sure the plume has not moved under the site, as well as the adequacy of barriers in place to prevent such movement of hazardous chemicals must be verified. The township should engage its own LSRP to represent the interests of the residents, communicate with the residents regarding progress of cleanup, and advocate when necessary with DEP. The township and/or the developer should provide infrastructure that will permit and encourage pedestrians and bicyclists to travel to and from any development near the Millington train station. Frequent and reliable public transportation should be provided between any development near the Millington train station and major shopping centers in Sterling and/or Basking Ridge. Any site plan for development in Millington should include open space and access to Passaic River for the general public. Now, I'm well aware that on May 9th, you're going to be voting on the rezoning of at least the Tifa site and the other properties for the affordable housing, which, by the way, is not just a concern of all the mayors. I mean, the Sierra Club is also very concerned about it as well, just because of the sheer volume of housing that will have to be built in a state that's largely built out, and the impact on the environment based on that type of what is ending up being largely new units of development as opposed to converting older units. But also I want to present this because even though you are most likely going to vote in favor of that, there are still things to be worked out in the developers agreement that are covered in this petition. And there's 346 people who have signed this petition. They're not all Long Hill residents, but well over 200, probably close to the 300 mark. And I apologize, I don't have an exact count for you, but have signed this petition. And it's not like we went door to door and did this. It was pretty easy to get these signatures. Further, much of what's in the resolution is already in our land use elements. These are things that we have written into our master plan that we say that we want. Specifically into the conservation element of the master plan, which talks about one of the goals for conservation is to follow a detailed environmental assessment procedure for all major development proposals in the township in accordance with the township's environmental impact statement ordinance, using BMP to minimize both on-site and off-site environmental disturbance. So, I mean, these are things that we've we have, as a community, decided are very important. In addition, it also says that the township should continue and expand its efforts to increase public access to our natural resources, which again was part of the petition, that we have access to the Passaic River. So, you know, these are not, I don't think, outrageous requests, and
Jack, can we accept the petition?
Sure.
So did you want
oh
us?
yeah, no, I would like to. I'll give you the resolution and the petition as well.
Sure. Should we have the clerk handle, so we
Yes.
have it for the record?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe, would you mind? Thank you, Kathy.
So, and I do have a concern, I've said this before, and I know and other people have said this to you as well, that because we did the process this way, where we are rezoning, and we're rezoning to the specifications specifically of a developer who is no longer the contract purchaser, but actually the owner of a site, that it's going to be much more difficult for us to negotiate these types of things and to not have us pay for them, to have these environmental studies paid for by the developer as opposed to the township. So I think you have a hard job ahead of you, but I think you usually do. And then, and finally, I think it is really important too for us to have our own LSRP, considering the relationship between one of our planning board members and the developer.
Jack, there's a couple of things, Jack, I think it's best he respond, not me.
Yes, with respect to the negotiations were with fair share. In fact, the developer wanted 220 units and never really backed off that. I think we've discussed all the other things before that MLUL doesn't allow us to do most of these things. The master plan is a guide. We have to act according to the zoning ordinances and the MLUL.
Thanks, Jack. And thank you, Kathy.
Yes.
We'll have that for the public record.
Okay.
Thank you.
And, yeah, and just, like, as I said, that we do have a member of the, do have a member of the planning board and a member of the master plan committee who has a relationship with the developer. And I understand that the conservation element is up for revision as well.
Thank you. Any other member of the public?
Charles Renowitz, Millington. I just got a couple clarifications. On the consent agenda, resolution 18143.
Say that again, Chuck?
Consent,
18143?
yeah, 18143.
Gotcha.
Page 8. It indicates that the housing element in the fair share plan is consistent with the goals and objectives of the township's April 23rd, 1996 master plan. My question for you is, we have, every 10 years, have to revise the master plan. We've done a re-examination in 2003. We did a re-examination in 2013. So should that state 1996, 2003, or 2013?
It's still the 2006 master plan. There have been re-examinations, but they didn't affect the relevant portions of the master plan.
So it's correct to say,
It's still the 2006 master plan.
1996.
1996 master plan, I'm sorry.
okay. So the two re-examinations don't matter.
Well, they do matter, but it's still the 1996 master plan. There've been re-examinations, and they haven't changed the relevant portions of the 1996 master plan.
Okay. When this was discussed at the master planning board committee meeting, I identified 3 goals that were inconsistent with what the affordable housing and the housing element demonstrated. A number of you were at that meeting. I'll reiterate the 3 goals. In order, the first goal is to conserve, enhance the essential rural and residential character of Long Hill Township in order to best provide for the health, safety, and welfare of all township residents. Rural and residential character. Going to 3 stories and more, going to 15 units an acre is not a rural residential environment. Goal number 2, to maintain the township's identity as a fundamentally low-density residential community and ensure that future development is compatible with and sensitive to existing residential areas and established neighborhoods. Again, two of the lots up for affordable housing are 15 plus units an acre, and I believe the other 2 are 12. We've got one, as I mentioned, Mayor, we've got one development that's close to 15. That's by the firehouse of Sterling. Goal number 6, to preserve, protect, and enhance the enhance the natural resources of the township and to make environmental issues a central part of the planning process in Long Hill. You had a petition today talking about the Tifa property and the environmental concerns. We've beaten it to death, and we're still going down that path. So my recommendation is that if you're going to send this to the judge and say it's consistent, you've got to take care of the 3 goals, and then you can say it's consistent. One other matter for discussion. We had lengthy discussions that the DEP is going to take care of us on the Tifa site. It's not our responsibility. We have the full faith of their issues. Coming here tonight, by the liquor store and the bank, there's a drilling vehicle there. Yesterday, they drilled well number 33. Today, they started on well number 34. What's that all about? Well, we had a spill or a leakage at the Exxon station. We've got 22 wells around that property. We've got 12 wells in the ShopRite parking lot, and they're going to take care of us. I called the project manager several years ago and said, how big was it? We don't know. I said, well, let me just tell you about how oil companies work. I spent 3 years at one. You take deliveries, 8,000 to 8,500 gallons a tank. You monitor the pumps of what you pump every day. You know the temperatures, and you take readings of the tanks. You know how much fuel has leaked. They don't know. This has been going on for years. And we're going to rely on this organization to protect us. It's been recommended we get our own LSRP. I couldn't agree with it more. And we don't know how many more wells they're going to develop. Bay Street, DEP said we got to put in water for these people because their water's contaminated from the fuel. So we put a water line in. Guess what we do? We dig up asbestos. No one monitors it. No one. This town or the DEP monitored it. We got the EPA involved here and looked at it and said, that's asbestos. This is an improper installation of the water line. But we're going to rely on New Jersey DEP. I don't think we should. Thank you for your time. And you can see the drilling mechanism on Valley Road.
Thank you, Chuck. Any other member of the public? Seeing none, oh, I apologize, Dennis. I do that to you every meeting. It's not intentional.
I try to be invisible. The Elks community-wide garage sale is on Saturday, May 5 from 8 to 3.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't have that at my fingertips before.
Well, usually it's all up here.
You have not said enough in praise of the Public Works Department for the brush business.
Well,
You
now
have not
you've
said
ruined it.
enough.
There's a marching band outside. I've got dancing bears, jugglers, clowns.
What they have accomplished, what they have tackled, of picking up everything that everybody puts out is incredible. There is one town nearby which has told the public, we will pick up branches that fall from township trees, that is to say, trees in the right-of-way. When we see branches in front of your house, we will look to see if we can identify the branches with a tree in the right-of-way, and if we can't make that identification, we won't pick them up. And we will pick up nothing more than that. On the other hand, Long Hill's Public Works Department will take everything and anything, and I think that's heroic, and you haven't said enough to thank them. If you want to know what town only picks up trees in the right-of-way, ask their attorney. He's sitting next to you.
Oh, no, I'm Bernardsville.
Huh?
I'm Bernardsville.
Yes, Bernardsville. Bernardsville is only picking up trees, branches that fall from trees in the right-of-way. And you have to be able to identify the branches coming from the tree.
I haven't heard that, but I believe you.
Yeah, well,
Bernard's Township
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
pick
what
up
I know,
anything.
Bernards Township.
They don't pick up
They're not picking
anything.
up anything.
they're not?
No.
Well,
I spoke with John Carpenter at length, because what I
Bernardsville is-
did, to your point about DPW, I did a survey of every town within, certain distance of us, and that's where we came up with the idea. Most of them were only picking up branches, just branches. Certainly not logs and tree stumps. Bernard's Township, he said, we don't pick up a thing.
On the other hand, if you came to the street fair and got your hands dirty from eating all the junk food that was for sale and wanted to find a wash station, you couldn't find a wash station. And do you know why? Because the wash station is in a shed in the back of the yard and it's trapped by piles of brush.
How many people were there on Saturday? Or Sunday?
The usual amount.
For that.
The fact that we had a freeze 2 days earlier really led to the spring fever. Let's get out and breathe some fresh air.
You outdid yourself with that weather.
Yeah, beautiful day.
Thanks you all for coming. But let's keep heaping the praise on Public Works, please.
Thank you, Dennis. I agree with you 100%. Tom, make sure you tell those guys, thank you. Okay, so now I'm looking for a motion to go with, Jack, I never get this phrase right. What do we say? We're going back there.
We're going, yes, we're going back into executive session for those things that were listed on the resolution to go into the first executive session, and we're not taking any further action, so the meeting will be adjourned at the conclusion of the executive session.
Motion to
So
go,
moved.
as Jack described.
Second.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you, everybody who watched at home.